Hey guys, I realized after a few comments recently that I'm way past due on giving you an update on my FAA case. To anyone that's unfamiliar with it, about 4 years ago I had made a low inspection pass at a friend of mine's backyard that I was invited to land at. Decided not to land. Neighbors called me in, turned into this big fiasco. And basically I continued to appeal through the different levels of first, to the FAA, then the NTSB, and then we got out of that whole system to a civil court, which was the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., hoping we could get heard fairly, and unfortunately they ruled against me on all fronts, and I was hit with a 120-day suspension. To anyone that's been following along, you guys know the suspension was never the reason that I truly was appealing. I wasn't really too worried about that. I actually already served the suspension from August to December of last year. It was a non-event. The big thing I was fighting for here was my fear that the precedent set from my case could have wide-standing wake that could kind of affect our freedoms as pilots. The reason I even appealed in the first place, when originally it was the suspension was given by the inspector. This inspector was an airframe safety inspector. He wasn't an ops guy. He didn't collect any data. They didn't have a single piece of evidence. He had one iPhone video of a security camera video, which didn't meet the best evidence rule. So to us, it was a no-brainer. They don't have anything. So of course we're going to appeal. After going into that hearing with the administrative law judge from the NTSB, at that point, it had gone to a hearing and I was ruled against based on that. And that's when the precedent got set, and that's when the scary and dangerous part came up. And at that point, I started making videos about it. As we worked our way up past then into the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, we had appeal briefs written by the Amici Group, which was the AOPA, EAA, Alaskan Airmen's Association. I had separate appeals coming in from senators. We had a very strong appeal. All of this is public info. If you want to look it up, you can read through them if you're into that type of stuff. But we thought we had a really good chance, and it was pretty disappointing that the court requested an in-person argument. So I had to fly my attorney and his assistant or secretary out there. Did a whole in-person argument of my case, and from everything that we can tell, it seems like they didn't deliberate at all and they just rubber-stamped government. It was an interesting timing on my case because one or two of my appeals kind of focused on this deference that in the ALJ, the administrative law judge's ruling on my case, he basically deferred to the FAA. He said, I'm not sure how to handle this, so I'm going to defer to what the FAA says. And that's not how these two systems work together. The NTSB is there to check and regulate and govern over the FAA, not defer to them and say, you guys do what you want. So that was the part that we found unconstitutional, and that was part of our appeal. Now, I'm not sure how many of you guys followed along with the Chevron doctrine, which dealt with government deference to other agencies. It was with the EPA. But basically, that case was about to go through the Supreme Court, and if the Chevron doctrine had gone through prior to mine, it definitely would have had an effect on my appeal. So it appears that they just kind of rushed through deliberating to get my case off their desk. Unfortunately, I don't know, maybe it was just poor timing on our part, poor luck, but either way, they ruled against me universally, and I lost the case. Now, so the big question, what does this mean? Because again, and I will continue to reiterate this, the suspension was not the problem here. My concern was the wake left behind my case, and we're already starting to see some other cases that lead us to wonder if what direction the FAA is going here. I don't know if you guys heard, the AOPA had actually released a news article about a pilot from Massachusetts that was landing a float plane on the Connecticut River. And he was actually doing takeoffs and landings, and he came within 500 feet of a bridge. Someone reported him, and they're trying to impose a 120-day suspension. Now again, this regulation 91-119, the one that they got me on, states, except when necessary for takeoff or landing, you have to stay that 500 feet away from things. Now, any part of a necessary takeoff or landing procedure is allowed. Obviously, there's plenty of airports, this one included, that there are structures within 500 feet of the runway. So obviously, when you're taking off or landing, you're going to be within that distance. And also, if it's a necessary training step, like a go around, a missed approach, practice approach, any of those inspection passes, those would all fall under necessary steps for a landing. Now the problem with this float plane pilot and this whole ordeal is that he was actually taking off and landing. And again, with my case, the only argument that the ALJ had was that in the event that I'm trying to fall under that except when necessary, that exception, the duty of proof is on me. So I'm basically guilty until proven innocent, and he said we weren't able to effectively prove my innocence, which again doesn't feel how due process should go. But with this case with the Massachusetts pilot, it's really concerning. The fact that he's getting the 120-day suspension does imply that they looked at mine, are they using my case as precedence? I haven't got confirmation either way if they are or aren't. I know that the FAA had the AOPA had concerns of this. So it's just a slippery slope. I don't know what the solution is to this. Obviously, Senator Budd pushed through that Backcountry Aviation Protection Act, which we did make enough noise, and it did make it in. However, the way that it was placed in, or the verbiage that they adopted it with, kind of allows the FAA discretion if they want to use that, which seems ridiculous to me. But basically, we did add the verbiage of go-arounds, practice approaches, missed approaches, and inspection passes as necessary parts of a landing. And so with that verbiage in there, it would have protected myself as well as this, although the other pilot that he was landing, I have no idea where the logic is for his case. We did get one part put through completely though, and that's the part that the FAA cannot enforce 91-119 onto a pilot in a way that would have forced the pilot to conduct a landing that's unsafe. So basically, the way that they ruled my case was that since I didn't land, it was illegal. If I would have landed, it would have been fine. Well, I said that I didn't like that landing spot and opted to move on, as I was advised to from the FAA's off-airport ops guide. And they said, well, you didn't land, so it's illegal. So they can no longer do that. So we did make a little progress there. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done. So hopefully, if you're not yet, it's the organizations like the AOPA specifically, but the EAA, the Alaskan Airmen's Association, these other associations that put money and time and effort into fighting for our freedoms. Just make sure if you're not members of those associations that you sign up and join, because it's those membership dues that make all of that possible, that continues to protect our freedoms as pilots. Anyway, that was a very long-winded explanation of my FAA case. Unfortunately, I was not successful in defending myself or fighting the good fight. So what I've learned from this whole thing, in hindsight, I wish I would have called an attorney sooner, because I did sit down for a little informal meeting with the FAA, and when they said, was this you flying that day? I said yes. And they said, were you within 500 feet of a structure? And I said yes. I was looking at a landing site, and my understanding is that's legal. If I had had an attorney, he probably would have advised me differently, and I wouldn't have just came out the gate and said yes, I was within 500 feet. Here I was just trying to be compliant, thought I was flying under the regs, and it bit me. So anyone that deals with something like this, I will say 99% of the people that work at the FAA are great, and they're here to help. It's just when you get that 1% that are out there to get you, and unfortunately I got that with that inspector, and it made it up the entire chain. So it was a enlightening and discouraging experience, but we got through it. So anyway, that's my update. I'm still here at Legend. Obviously I have my certificate back. I'm fine. That's all behind me. We're working through a few little cooling things because we're blasting off to Sun and Fun in a couple days. So if you're going to be at Sun and Fun, make sure to come find me. I'll probably be at the Legend booth. We'll probably do a meet and greet at some point. If you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on there. I will let everyone know what time I'll plan on being there to hang out at the Legend booth, and then hopefully we can see you guys there. So with all that, you guys, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for caring and paying attention to this case and making as much noise as we did. I think it did truly help, and it means a lot to me. So with that, I'm gonna wrap this one up here. You guys know the drill. Like this video if you do. Subscribe if you haven't. Come be my wingman. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
I know you are innocent, and the weight of consequence don't make much sense sometimes. No. Oh, wrong place, wrong time, good shot, but they got more.